Acts chapter 27. Paul commences voyage towards the city of Rome. And when the decision had been made that we should proceed and sail to Italy, Paul and some other captives were handed over to a centurion called Julius, who belonged to the Augustan regiment. We proceeded on board a ship from Adramyttium, prepared to set sail for the seaports of the region of Asia. And we commenced our journey. Notable in our company was Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica. A day later we came to Sidon. Julius was quite nice to Paul and granted him every freedom to go and visit his friends and receive care and all he wanted. We proceeded from that place, and as the blowing winds were contrary, we sailed on the sheltered area of Cyprus. And sailing across the sea of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we arrived at Myra, a city in Lycia. And the centurion saw a ship sailing from Alexandria and whose destination was Italy. And he took us aboard. We sailed gradually for many days and with considerable difficulty eventually reached off Cnidus. The wind not allowing us to advance any further, we therefore sailed on the sheltered area of Crete, off Salmon. We did not sail far from the coast, but proceeded with difficulty until we arrived at a place known as Safe Havens, not distant from the city of Lasea. Now a long time had already been spent in the place, until there was obvious danger continuing the journey, as the day of atonement was already over. Paul warned them and told them, "Friends, I can see that this journey will end with calamity, great trouble and losses, ruins of the cargo, ship, even our lives, everything." But the centurion believed what the captain and the owner of the ship argued, and not in Paul's warning. The harbor was not an excellent place to winter in, and so the majority of the travelers argued that they should set sail and strive to get to Phoenix, a much better place to winter. Phoenix is a harbor in Crete, opening towards the southwest and northwest. Now, there was a mild wind blowing from the south, and the men reasoned that they had obtained their wish. And so, proceeding on the great ocean, they sailed as close as possible along Crete. But shortly thereafter, a dangerous headwind known as the Euroclydon developed. Sure enough, it hit the ship. Clearly, the ship could not head right into the wind. So we gave up trying and allowed it to be driven by the tempest. And proceeding under the shelter of a small island named Claudia, we managed to secure the skiff with quite some challenges. They pulled it on board and then strapped some ropes tight to undergird the ship. But they dreaded running aground off the shore of Libya. So they struck sail and allowed the ship to be driven by the tempest. The tempest continued and raged violently. And so the following day, they had to throw out quite a few of the ship's cargo to lighten the ship. A day later, we threw away some of the ship's special equipment with our very hands. Now, for many days, there was neither sunrise nor stars at night, and the tempest kept raging furiously. We finally despaired and completely lost any hope that we would be saved. But after everyone aboard had suffered a long abstinence from food, Paul stood before all and said, "Friends, you should have listened to me and not have proceeded from Crete, only to incur this calamity and tremendous loss. Now, I appeal to you to remain calm. Let not your hearts be troubled. Nobody here is going to die. Only the ship will be ruined. For last night, an angel of the Lord God, to whom I belong, and whom I venerate and serve, approached me and told me, 'Fear not. Fear not, Paul. You must come before Caesar. And certainly the Lord God has spared the lives of everyone aboard sailing with you. Therefore, courage. Courage. Take heart. Take heart, friends. In God I trust. I believe everything will be precisely as I was informed. But we will run aground on an island that is yet unknown.' This was the 14th night since the trouble began. We were being driven up and down everywhere in the Mediterranean by the furious tempest. About midnight, the sailors perceived that they were approaching some land, and they took measurements and observed that the ocean was about 40 meters deep. After a little while, as the ship was being tossed further by the storm, they took measurements again and observed that the ocean was about 30 meters deep. Then, they also feared that the ship might hit some dangerous rock or run aground on rocks. So they dropped 4 anchors from the rear of the ship and beseeched the Lord for sunlight when the day comes. At this point, the sailors were looking for an opportunity to escape from the ship. They dropped the skiff into the ocean, pretending that their objective was to put out anchors from the front of the ship. Paul told the centurion and the combat troops, "Unless these sailors remain aboard to guide the ship, you cannot be rescued." So the troops cut off the ropes that were fastened to the skiff and immediately dropped into the ocean. And just before daybreak, Paul appealed to everybody to eat breakfast. This day is precisely the 14th day you have stood and remained standing without food. You have not eaten a thing ever since. And so, I appeal to you all, please eat something. This is absolutely for your own survival. For nothing will be lost from any of you, not even a strand of hair on your heads. After saying these words, Paul took bread and gave thanks and praise to God. in the presence of everybody. He broke the bread and began to have breakfast. They were encouraged, and everybody aboard joined Paul and had breakfast. In total, we were 276 travelers aboard the ship. After all had eaten breakfast and were satisfied, they emptied the ship of unnecessary burdens by casting all the wheat into the ocean. Daylight soon appeared. However, the sailors did not recognize the shore. They only spotted a bay with a beach onto which they intended to run the ship ultimately. At this point, they released the anchors and allowed them to sink into the ocean. In the meantime, they untied the rudder ropes, and then they raised the mainsail so that the gusts would drive the ship forward. And we made for shore. But ultimately, the ship ran into a sandbank and proceeded aground. The front area of the vessel struck fast and could not proceed anywhere, while the rear area was being pounded and badly damaged by the terrifying waves. The combat troops already planned to kill every captive in order to prevent them from swimming off and escaping. But the centurion, wishing to rescue Paul, stopped them from killing any captive. He ordered that those who were good swimmers should jump into the ocean first and swim fast to safety on land. And the rest must proceed also, some on light boards and some on other broken parts and pieces of the ship. Ultimately, everybody escaped and arrived safely on land.